May I request Mr. Vinod Dham, Mr. A.K. Purwar, Mr. P.R. Srinivasan, and Mr. Paresh Weiss to grace the stage, please. And Mr. Paresh Weiss will be the session chair for the panel, so I'll just make a quick introduction about him. So he's the Managing Director of Alvarez & Marshall in Mumbai, where he leads A&M's practice in India. With over 20 years of experience in turnaround and performance improvement, Mr. Weiss has served clients across a range of industries, including pharmaceuticals, healthcare, commercial operations, automotive, and technology. Prior to joining A&M, Mr. Weiss was a partner and managing director with the Boston Consulting Group in Mumbai. In this role, he led the firm's operations practice in India, as well as its pharmaceutical practice. Previously, Mr. Weiss was a partner with McKinsey & Company, Inc., where he co-founded McKinsey's Indian and Asian operation practices. He also led the pharmaceuticals practice for McKinsey in India. Mr. Weiss served clients globally on issues ranging from operations to organization and business strategy. Mr. Weiss earned a bachelor's degree, summa cum laude, in computer science and economics from Dartmouth College. He holds a master's degree in business administration with honors from Harvard Business School. A US national, Mr. Weiss is fluent in Hindi and English. Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So we have a very exciting panel lined up for you here. So basically the way we've structured it, we'll have a couple of introductory comments by me about what's been happening in private equity in 2010. And then I'll really have each of my panelists speak for about 5 to 8 minutes on a variety of themes, their experiences in 2010, and then we'll open it up for questions. So be thinking about what you'd like to ask the distinguished panel we have here today. By way of introduction, as you probably know, A&M, we do a lot of work in private equity, which is why we have a bit of a perspective on what's been happening in the space. We work with 175 funds around the world, largely in the role of kind of outsourced or external operating partners working with portfolio companies of funds. So as we look at what's been happening in the private equity space, it's been a good year, 2010. There's been $205 billion worth of deals globally, which is up from $95 billion worth in 2009. So a doubling of deal flow in the world. And in India as well, you've seen a doubling of deals from $4 billion worth of deals to $8 billion. So these, again, little facts to keep in mind for those of you who are not familiar with it. Within India, we've seen a lot more focus on 3 sectors in particular. One is the infrastructure sector, which has got 1/3 of the deals in 2010. The BFSI sector, which has been 13%, and telecom, which has been about 10%. So about half the deals, a little more than half, have been these 3 sectors. Also, India has been seen a pretty exciting year for exits. We've had 121 exits this year compared to 66 in 2009, so almost a doubling, again, in terms of the exits that have happened in 2010. And the majority of these were through M&A transactions, which many of you were probably part of. 24 of them were through IPO, and 96 of them through M&A. In terms of fundraising was the one area where I think 2010, as many of you are probably aware, was a little slower. You've seen kind of flat fundraising globally. So 246 billion was the number for 2009 in terms of funds raised, and 2010 saw a drop to $225 billion. In India, again, also you've seen kind of flat fundraising at $8 billion for both years. So not much change in that space. We have some data on who are the largest funds raised, but $2.5 billion raised by Carlyle Asia. 3i raised $1.6 billion. You're probably familiar with the number of the funds who've been raising money. So again, a very positive start to 2011 from the history that we've seen in 2010. People are very bullish about what they would like to see in terms of investments they make in India. So most investors plan to increase their exposure to India over the next couple of years. And projections expect that over the next 5 years, you'll see actually a doubling of PE investment in India. So very bullish, and again, people are particularly excited about the infrastructure sector and education, healthcare, and clean energy. So with those brief comments, I'd like to really kick it off and get some of our speakers to start talking about what's been happening. And I think we'll ask Mr. Vinod Dham to start off. Let me just introduce Mr. Dham and tell you why we've chosen him to start. They've been in this space for 4 years. They're going to talk about their experience for the last 4 years. But Vinod is Vin for short, is a founding managing director at IndoUS Venture Partners. They're based in Santa Clara. And prior to founding IndoUS Venture Partners, Vin got his initial exposure to India by managing a cross-border incubator called New Path Ventures LLC that leveraged India's high-skilled, low-cost talent as R&D for US-based startups. Earlier, Vin was the CEO of Silicon Spice, a startup that was eventually sold to Broadcom for $1.2 billion. He was also Chief Operating Officer at NextGen and was instrumental in its successful sale to AMD for $800 million. Before his startup stints, Vin was a senior executive at Intel and is known as the father of the Pentium for his contributions to leading that project from inception to its outstanding success. During his 15 years at Intel, Vin has successfully managed multi-billion-dollar revenue products in the 386, 486, and Pentium processor families, and was co-inventor of Intel's flash technology. I'm going to ask Vin to really comment on his last 4 years in this space and what are his learnings and what is experience that he can provide to this group. So Vin, if I can ask you to come up.
Thank you, Parag. Yeah, I think I'm the odd man out here on this stage. Everybody has a finance background and private equity background. As you could hear, my background is engineering, and I basically am an accidental venture capitalist, partly by choice, to create more Dhams in India by coming here and funding a few companies and hoping at least one or two of them will succeed and create a wave of excitement of what it means to be an entrepreneur, other than a family entrepreneur. That's what India has been for the last centuries. How can young people become successful? It really has been my dream, and that's what led to the formation of this fund. So I'll give you a little perspective, because in venture capital, you don't talk about just 1 year. You know, the venture capital funds are 10-year funds, and you raise the fund and you start deploying the capital. It takes about 4 years, 4.5 years, or 5 years to deploy the capital. And then you harvest your deployment. So we are really at the midpoint, and over the last 4.5 years, we have deployed our capital into about 24 companies. And now we are at the threshold of beginning to see some of those companies get to a stage where we will see some of the exits in forms of M&As and IPOs. When I really came to India for investment, money was all raised in the US. I really had no idea what I'm going to find here. And luckily, by the way, unlike the gentlemen on this stage who are very heavyweight private equity people, venture capital is less than 5% of the total money that was being talked about here. And I'm really happy it's only less than 5%, because if it's more, then in our business, either the valuations will go up or there'll be too much money chasing too few deals. Currently, I think there's just about right balance. There's about $3 billion that has been raised in the last 5 years in venture capital in India. And I would say maybe about 2.5 or so has been deployed in about over 500, 600 companies in startup activity. In our business, and the reason I am doing this business, even though I'm not a finance guy, it's less to do with numbers, and it has a lot to do with truly creating some new business model or a new innovation. And so what we judge is, when an idea is given to us, whether this individual has a unique, compelling, differentiated, value-added idea, and whether this team has the wherewithals to go ahead and implement the ideas and execute their strategy so that they can see it to fruition. Actually, one of our investment is Basis, and Shish was here talking about the fund accounting as a knowledge process outsourcing KPO. So when we came here, I think one of the biggest surprises that I'll share with you that I had of investing in venture capital, since I am from Silicon Valley and quite familiar with what happens in Silicon Valley for the last 30, 35 years, I, to my disappointment, didn't see a lot of activity relating to inventing new technologies. The word invention, I have not seen being utilized a lot. There's a lot of innovation in terms of applying existing technologies to create new services across the board for these ever-growing consuming class in India that needs anything from A to Z. But there's very few companies, if any, I have come across that truly are thinking very original ideas of how to create a new paradigm shift or a new Google or a new chip or a new industry based on that. But having said that, I think it's clear to me why it is that way, because India is just on the threshold of, with the reform process taking off. And the first needs that have to be met for the country are the needs of infrastructure, the needs of transportation, the needs for, basic needs in retail for people to buy goods and services. So that's where a lot of the activity in investment is. And that's the remaining 95% activity that the other panelists on this stage are involved in. But we are very happy that we are where we are because our backgrounds are in technology and it allows us to do the kind of things that we do, and we hope that the private equity people never really wake up and start impinging upon what we do for our living. And I'm not afraid of it because talking informally, I realize that they're quite scared of doing the heavy lifting in the trenches that we do, of building the companies. They're basically happy with investing big money and looking at balance sheets, et cetera. So I think India is, I see it, this process of evolution continue for many decades to come. I see nothing that should really slow it down. There's no reason for it to slow down. I was just looking at the numbers on IT services, and it went from, I think beginning of the century, when I was here at 2000 looking into saying what should I do, it was $2 billion, and now it's $75 billion. And they're talking about $225 billion in 3 more years, and that's just a very small number. And I used to constantly say that, we shouldn't be very happy with $50 billion revenue because the total industry in services is about $1 trillion in the world. And we should talk about at least having 25% of that. And I think we're getting to that point where those numbers are coming to be realized. And similarly, I think there's going to be a huge uptick in private equity, venture capital to build everything that needs to be built. The beauty of me coming here, having been born here and coming here has been that I think I'm witnessing, and it's a lot more clearer when you are coming from outside, I think, than when you live here. And I feel very proud to be witnessing not just a company being built. And when I was at Intel, I saw a company being built from scratch to a world-class semiconductor company. I watch a country being built. And every time I come here every 3 months, I literally see a change. In every city I go to, from Chennai to Hyderabad to Bangalore to Delhi, these are some of my regular stops, or Pune, I see changes there taking place within 3 months period. And that's very exciting to me and very positive to me. Thank you.